Director General Shri Rakesh Kumar Verma ji, Dr. Kritika Mathur, the coordinator and convener of this event, research scholars, and all the participants joining us in this hall and online. Good morning to all of you. The conference brochure says that this conference is a platform where academic research meets operational excellence. Democratic theory has been shaped over the centuries by great philosophers and thinkers such as John Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, Thomas Paine, Jeremy Bentham, Alexis de Tocqueville, John Stuart Mill, Joseph Schumpeter, Karl Popper, Robert Hall, John Rawls, Jürgen Habermas, David Held, among many others. Their ideas have shaped our understanding of liberty, equality, rights, justice, constitutionalism, popular sovereignty, and democratic governance. Election management, election administration, and operational excellence, on the other hand, has been the work of administrators, policymakers, and practitioners. The first tradition argues about what democracy ought to deliver. And the second tradition figures out how a country can actually deliver those outcomes. The objective or ambition of this conference is to synthesize these two traditions. It is to synthesize these two conversations. At IIIDEM, we believe that there is a symbiotic and a reciprocal relationship between democratic values and democratic outcomes or democratic delivery. And we have identified certain pillars of delivery such as inclusion, peace, resilience, and sustainable development. Now, these democratic values produce these kind of societies which are inclusive, societies which are peaceful, societies which are resilient, and societies which uphold sustainable development. And such societies in turn defend democratic values and keep democratic values alive. Now, the whole task of democracy's future is to strengthen this loop, is to strengthen this symbiosis, is to strengthen this reciprocity between democratic values and democratic outcomes or delivery. Now, this is important because democracy survives only when people trust it. And people trust democracy only when it delivers. It delivers certain outcomes which have positive impact on their life. And democracy is said to have delivered when people can feel liberty, when people can experience equality, when people can claim rights and can access basic public services and can find justice. International IDEA, with whom we have collaboration, in one of its reports, it defines democracy as a system in which citizens have control over public decisions and a system in which citizens exercise this control as equals. But the question is with regard to the extent to which this is true in reality in a particular democratic country. Now, the extent to which this is true in reality does not depend upon what exists on paper, what is written in the Constitution, but rather what is experienced in practice. A constitution may say that power belongs to the people. A court may say that free and fair elections are part and parcel of the basic structure of the constitution. A government may say, or the ruling party may say, that it has the consent of the people. But the real test of democracy is on the ground and in the life of ordinary citizens. Indeed, principles, values, ideas give democracy its meaning. But enshrining those values in constitution is obviously necessary, but it is not a sufficient condition for democratic survival, not a sufficient condition for democratic sustainability and effective delivery of public goods and services. The IIIDEM's democracy that delivers framework insists that democracy can be and shall be judged based on the outcomes, based on what they deliver across four pillars of inclusion, peace, resilience, and sustainable development. Now, delivery across these four pillars requires a full recipe with all its ingredients. First of all, delivery requires the capacity to deliver. Delivery requires the capacity to deliver. Following Michael Mann's distinction, let me say that capacity does not mean authoritarian capacity. It does not mean despotic capacity, but rather it means infrastructural capacity. It means administrative capacity, fiscal capacity, legal capacity, regulatory capacity, and crisis management capacity. Capacity does not mean the capacity to act over society, but capacity means the capacity to act through society with the consent and compliance of people. This brings me to the second ingredient, which is legitimacy in the Weberian sense of the term. While capacity is the state's power to act, the state's power to deliver, legitimacy is the society's reason to accept, society's reason to trust, society's reason to comply and obey. This is important because every act of delivery on any particular pillar, whether it is a concession to resolve a conflict, whether it is a welfare policy, whether it is environmental protection policy or a development project, it imposes some immediate costs on some groups, some people, somewhere for some period. And these costs are immediate. And these costs may appear in the form of tax, in the form of regulation, or in the form of reallocation. Overall, every act of delivery on any pillar tends to some extent, disturb the existing arrangements. Because policies, costs, and benefits can be asymmetric. There can be asymmetry across times, which means that there can be short-term costs and long-term benefits. Short-term costs are immediate and long-term benefits are unseen and uncertain to people. And then there can be asymmetry across groups, which means that one section may perceive that they are incurring the costs and another section is reaping all the benefits. So because of these asymmetries, it becomes very important for the state and the government and the institutions to have that kind of legitimacy that people accept the policies in order to help the government deliver. So when state enjoys legitimacy, there is voluntary compliance, which is the foundation of effective governance, which is the foundation of effective delivery. But when legitimacy is weak, governance becomes slow, delivery becomes slow and conflict ridden. Therefore, legitimacy is a functional requirement of delivery. Now, what is the most important element of legitimacy in a context where costs and benefits are asymmetrically distributed? The most important element of legitimacy is the perception that delivery is serving the society as a whole, that it is not biased against or in the favor of any particular group, especially not biased against those people or groups or parties who are out of power. It is the perception that state and its institutions are anti-capture, state and its institutions are anti-rent seeking, and the state and its institutions are non-predatory. In simple terms, it is a perception that no single class, caste, community, or party can capture the public institutions and use them for private gains. Now, this brings me to two important ingredients of delivery: inclusion and autonomy. The idea of autonomy is based on the experience of East Asian developmental states. And the idea more precisely is what Peter Evans called embedded autonomy. Peter Evans says that developmental success in terms of economic development and economic growth needs two things at once. Number one, the state must be embedded in society, which means the state must be able to understand the needs of the society and should be able to work with society. But at the same time, the state should be autonomous enough or insulated enough to resist rent seeking from dominant groups, to resist capture by one particular group. So while Peter Evans asked this question, that why some states succeed in driving development, and found the answer in embedded autonomy, Ajemoglu and Robinson asked, and this is the title of their book, Why Nations Fail. So why some nations fail? And they found the answer in the presence of extractive institutions, or in other words, in the absence of inclusive institutions. So the fourth ingredient is the presence of institutions which are inclusive, which are independent, which are impartial, and are not extractive. This is an important distinction because the same state and administration that delivers public goods in the context of inclusive institutions delivers private plunder when the institutions are extractive. Now the fifth ingredient is, which is very important, accountability. And accountability works or functions along three axes. First is vertical accountability, which people or citizens exercise through free and fair elections. Second aspect or dimension of accountability is horizontal accountability through checks and balances, through separation of powers, and through competition between governments. That can be vertical competition as well as horizontal competition, intergovernmental competition as well as interjurisdictional competition, which means that ambition should be made to counter ambition in order to balance so that the power is not concentrated in the executive. Now, third is the diagonal accountability, which is societal, which is a kind of accountability which is exercised by free media, by unbiased media, free press, and a vigilant civil society. This robust accountability is very important because it ensures that there is no corruption, no leakage in the process of delivery. Sixth, and the final enabling condition, which is last, as we say, but not the least, citizen empowerment. Citizens are empowered when they have rights based and justiciable entitlements. Entitlements to education, to health, to livelihood, and food security. These entitlements expand their capabilities. These entitlements leads to human development. And because these are right based, there is no pretense by the government that these entitlements are given to people as some kind of benevolence by the ruling party. So these are right based. So people can say that we are receiving this not some kind of a favor by a benevolent leader, but as a matter of our right. So citizens are also empowered. The second condition for empowerment is that they have access to unbiased information. They have access to reliable information from the sources which are not directly controlled by the government. These kind of sources of reliable sources of information are required because it strengthens their critical thinking. It strengthens their independent judgment and it strengthens their ability, capability, capacity for making informed democratic decisions. Now, these conditions, this recipe works through two pathways, top down and bottom up. There are top down channels, there are bottom up channels and institutions, but in order to make them work, a spirit is required. For the top down mechanisms and institutions to work properly, leading to delivery of the intended benefits, what is required is political will. Whether incumbents exercise political will or not also depends upon how accountable the institutions are which they lead. And from bottom up, we need very strong channels of participation, channels of deliberation and debate through which empowered citizens exercise their right to hold the government accountable. They supply feedback and they hold the political incumbents responsible and accountable. So, willingness and capability. Willingness on the part of the government, capability on the part of government, state, and institutions, and willingness and capability of civil society, of citizens. Now, this democratic delivery emerges from the interaction of these two pathways operating in parallel. When inclusive institutions and independent institutions facilitate bottom up and top down pathways, then a force multiplier is required. And this is the last force multiplier. And this is also title of one of these sessions as well, which is digital infrastructure or digital public infrastructure. However, the research also shows that this digital public infrastructure is, although it is a force multiplier, but it is a blind force multiplier. It multiplies what exists, which means it multiplies whatever it sits upon. If the context is of extractive institutions, this DPI, digital public infrastructure, will amplify surveillance, will amplify exclusion, which is why the foundations of inclusive institutions is required, which cannot be ignored. So overall, the recipe is complete only when all of its ingredients are present. It's like we make some recipe at home, even if one particular thing is missing, for instance, even if salt is missing, it does not taste like what it is supposed to taste like. So therefore, the overall recipe is that the state is capable, state and its institutions are legitimate, state is autonomously embedded, institutions are inclusive, institutions are accountable, citizens are empowered and citizens are informed, and the overall information environment is free and unbiased. And without this recipe, even best designed constitution and best intentioned government cannot deliver on any pillar. Thank you very much for listening with rapt attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful remarks.